So let's get your thoughts right away on the Angels definitely doubling down on no, not trading Ohtani, letting the world know, and then trading away essentially their two best prospects that are in the minor leagues right now.
Well, to me, if they were going to trade Ohtani, Scott, they should have done it a year ago. And that was the time, and that was when you could have gotten basically the equivalent of the Juan Soto trade that the Padres made with the Nationals. That kind of return that went back to Washington. This year, he's the all-time rental. Yes, I get it, but he's still a rental, and I don't know that the value would have been what you would have determined as reasonable for a player of that caliber. So I understood what they did with regard to not trading him. I never thought they were going to trade him. Arte Moreno, their owner, never seemed comfortable trading him. We've been talking about this for weeks, and I've been saying that pretty consistently. At the same time, when a team goes for it like this, it's a little bit like, whoa, hold on. And I understand they might as well go for it. You're trying to get to the playoffs for the first time since 2014 in perhaps your last chance with both Ohtani and Trout. You're trying to make an impression on Ohtani with the hope of possibly re-signing him. If you trade him, you're cutting the cord. That's almost always what happens with free agents who get traded. So I do get it from the Angels' perspective. Do I think it will work? I have my doubts.
Hey, Ken, so what I was just saying before, this trade to me it's not going to make them win the World Series for one. I don't think so. I think they're going to have to do a couple more things. Now, do you see them doing more trades now since this piece has fallen? And two, I just didn't. I thought they should have traded him. I thought this was a big opportunity for them to get a big kickback. You know, would Trout been mad? Of course. But at the same time, the players they probably could have got back in the draft picks as well would have been unbelievable to me. But I still don't see them as a World Series team. It's not about getting to the playoffs. It's about winning the World Series at the end of the day. No?
For the Yankees and for the Dodgers and for other teams, it's about winning the World Series. For the Angels at this point, when you have not been to the World Series, to the playoffs since 2014, getting to the playoffs would be really good. And especially if it somehow manifests in a better opportunity to sign Ohtani and to keep him. They're not ruling that out. They believe it's still possible, and they believe that with the course that they've taken, going back to the offseason, we've talked about this, guys, when they made a lot of moves in the offseason to get better. Then during the season, they've promoted 3 players from their 2022 draft just this season. Then they traded for Eduardo Escobar and Mike Moustakas. So they have been on this path toward trying to get to the playoffs. That's why trading Ohtani would have been inconsistent, especially when they're this close right now. Now, is it a great chance? No, it's something like 16% according to Fangraphs. But if you're the Angels and you've got this guy, a historic player who could do historic things this season, it's really difficult to trade him. And that's why, Todd, it was just never really going to be at their forefront unless they totally collapsed. And even then, I don't know that they wanted to do it.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. I meant prospects. I know some people I get trolled out there. I meant prospects. Okay, thank you.
Picks,
Not picks. I get excited. You know how I get.
Yeah, that's all good, man.
Todd's in fantasy football season a little bit. That's okay. Ken, is this more the Angels ruining the market by overvaluing other people, or is the market being ruined by teams who undervalue what it takes to get players?
First of all, Eric, I never look at it like one team ruining the market. If one team is willing to pay, that's their decision, and the other teams are just going to have to deal with it. And if it's ruined for them, well, too bad. Maybe you should have made that deal and done it preemptively. But certainly, the price they paid was high. Now, I think it was you, Eric, who made a really good point. The Angels' second and third prospects might not be other teams' second and third prospects, but they still were their number 2 and 3 prospects, and they traded them not for 2 guys who were stars. Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez, these are capable major league pitchers, but they're merely capable. I don't know that they're much above that. Giolito maybe, and Lopez maybe too, but let's face it, they're not going to all-star games and doing monstrous things, and they're rentals. So you're trading a potential future catcher and a 6'6" left-hander who admittedly has had injury problems this year for 2 months of Giolito and 2 months of Reynaldo Lopez. If you get there, I don't think anyone cares. And maybe the prospects never make it. We see this all the time, guys. At the same time, the way the game operates right now, the way general managers approach trades, the way teams in general function, this kind of deal is an aberration. It is a high price for a rental, but the Angels, again, are in an extremely unique position, really an unprecedented position in the sports history, when you have a player like this, and you've only got him for 2 more months potentially, and you want to make sure you take your best shot with him and then perhaps keep him. That's a little bit different than most of the teams are dealing with.
I give them credit for being aggressive. At the same time, if, say, Blake Snell and Josh Hader suddenly become available, I would have given up my top 5 prospects if I'm the Angels. I think they would have made a larger impact for them down the stretch and in a playoff run potentially for them. So do you think that they're capable of doing anything else big? Because I'm looking from a farm system perspective, and I'm like, you're going to lose out on most trade offers at this point. That's step 1. Step 2, part 2 of this question for me is, do you think that in their casual conversations, they were like, we're not going to make a trade that is going to like blow up the sport in terms of how many prospects we're going to bring back. So it's not going to look incredible for us. Let's just go for it. And it's a sign of what, say, teams like the Rays and the Orioles are going to do. They have this discipline meter where they're like, we're not going over it no matter what, even if we think the move could win us a World Series.
Well, a couple things. One, part of their rationale, from what I understand, is they feared that Blake Snell and Josh Hader would not become available, that Marcus Stroman might not become available with the Cubs on this little bit of a surge here. So they felt that in order to get the pitchers that they wanted, or pitchers that they wanted, they had to jump. And that's why with nearly a week before the deadline, they acted in the way that they did. Now, in terms of what they could have gotten back, Scott, it would not have been the same as what it would have been last year. And could it have been 2 top 100 prospects and maybe a third player, maybe a major leaguer at some level? I assume it could have been. It is Shohei Ohtani, and for the chance to get him, teams would have moved mountains, so to speak. But at the same time, it's what we just described in reverse. You're trading for prospects, and you've got Ohtani. And you're Arte Moreno, and you get all this money from Japanese advertisements and merchandise and all these things that you have because you have Ohtani. You want to play this thing out. And that is the approach that they took. And again, I don't really have much of a fault with them or for doing what they did, this particular deadline. The last deadline, if you really were thinking long-term about your franchise and long-term stability and health of your franchise, that is when you should have done it. They didn't do it then. And at that point, okay, they're in on Ohtani and they're in on keeping him, and they're going to do what they have to do, which is exactly how they've proceeded since.
What's going on, Ken? How you doing,
Lorenzo?
today?
How's it going, man?
Been all right. Me personally, I agree with everything.
This ain't the Zach Greinke trade, by the way. Zach Greinke for Lorenzo Kane.